Okay, let's start now. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Shivam, and I'm the marketing manager at ZapScale. ZapScale, as you might know, we are the customer success platform for B2B SaaS businesses. Today, we are presenting how to build your customer success investment thesis presented by Manasij Ganguli, founder, CEO, ZapScale. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box or the chat box in your Zoom control panel. I will bring them up at the end of the webinar. Um, in addition to that, we will also be running a couple of polls based around the context of the webinar on which you can participate and tell us your views. So without further ado, I will hand the mic to Manasij. Over to you, Manasij.
Thank you very much, Shivam. Thanks everybody for joining us this evening. The objective for this webinar is for me to very quickly go over the investment thesis on customer success. You guys as investors, you guys look into all sorts of technologies and products and services. It will be very difficult for you to keep an eye on everything at the same time. Last 3 years, I've eaten, drink, and slept on this problem every day. So I thought it would be a great idea for, at least from our perspective, to give whatever we know to build at least an investment thesis for all you lovely folks. So with that thought, we thought it would be great to invite all of you guys and see if we can help in terms of getting you the investment thesis part of it. So the objective for today's call for me is to walk you through the process. As Shivam mentioned, my name is Manasij. This is my second B2B SaaS business. I've built a SaaS business in the past from Singapore. We had 24 countries in GTM, 170 customers. In 2019, we sold that business to a company in the UK. Now, of course, we are building a US-centric B2B SaaS customer success platform. We are focused towards mid-market and SMB side of the entire business. We have just recently raised funds, $2.5 million, led by Bloom and a couple of other lovely investors. And the objective today is for me to give you a quick perspective of what customer success is and how can you guys start looking into evaluating CS platforms and the entire space here. So as Shiva mentioned, if you have any questions at any point, there's a question answer in a panel which we can always use. And in the middle of the presentation, at some point, we will stop and take a couple of polls and we will go through our process right now. Okay, so very quickly, today's agenda that we have for this discussion, there are basically 6 points. We will go through the need of why CS is important. I'll be using CS as the word for customer success. And then, of course, we will go into the details of CS, what exactly CS is and what does it mean for B2B SaaS companies. Then we look into the CS landscape, the opportunities, and of course, we will spend some time to understand how can you guys evaluate CS tools better. And of course, I will end up with a very quick perspective of where this particular business vertical is headed towards. Okay, so on that note, let's just quickly go to the first agenda item, which is what is the need for CS at the moment? So very quickly, at the moment, the SaaS revolution is what is fueling the entire customer success part. SaaS basically means that people may or may not renew your product license, which means all the power stays with the customers at the moment. And that actually puts the pressure on making sure that you can hold on to your customer for longer. And that is a primary focus for CS folks that, hey, I need to absolutely lock onto my customers, make sure they renew with me, stay happy with me, because there are very clear motivations. A 1% reduction in the churn can improve your ARR over 38% in 3 years. So I've linked the source. We will, of course, share this presentation with you guys so that you can actually go through each of the data points and sources that we have got the data from. And it's 5 times more expensive today to acquire a new customer than to basically have the same customer retain and give you more money. The customer index right now, if you have a gross churn of 5% or so, it is all right. If anything churn is 0%, that is absolutely fantastic. And if your revenue churn is in negative zone, that is considered to be the most ideal one. And if you have a churn of around 10%, that is actually considered pretty bad. So it's all about churn and managing churn and keeping your customers happy, because SaaS essentially means that you need to have your customers retained so that you can have a much longer cycle of MRRs and ARRs coming from them. So moving on, SaaS is moving to the stratosphere. We already know this piece. Today, the SaaS revenue is around $200 billion, and it will be reaching to around $300 billion in the next 10 years. It's an 11% CAGR growth that we profess in SaaS. So, which means that if SaaS grows, we should also expect the customer success CS part to be also growing with the same pace. And similarly, the number of people who are doing SaaS is going to grow tenfold in the next 10 years. So that's a very, very strong push in terms of the entire customer base for CS will increase 10x in the next 10 years. And all of these guys would be in need of CS tools down the line for them to be able to retain their customers better, do better upsells, and make more money out of them. And finally, SaaS is still very much a US play. US continues to be the number one company for SaaS. EU, of course, is coming up quite nicely. So is China and India. But typically, it's a US play, and that's why you would see most of CS companies either migrating to US or building their business centered around the entire US process, because 2/3 of the entire market is still US. Okay, so very quickly put, the CS space alone is expected to grow from 1 billion today to about 10 billion in 10 years, with a CAGR of 2.26%, which is 2.5 times of what the CAGR growth of SaaS market is. So CS is expected to have a very, very strong growth in the next 10 years or so, which is why making a CS business right now makes sense. Investing into the CS business makes sense. So very quick, recap: the CAGR of SaaS is going to be 11% growth, $300 billion. The SaaS vendors will grow 10x. SaaS itself will have a very, very strong growth here itself. Similarly, the CS space will grow to a $10 billion per space. So CS is basically fueled by SaaS right now. So your bets in CS are essentially your bets in the fact that SaaS is going to grow and rule the roots from here. So that's our first section, which is where we covered the need for CS, which is basically the fact that as and when SaaS grows, CS is expected to see a backhanded growth around the same trajectory. Let's go into seeing what exactly is the customer success about. So this section, we will look into what exactly is CS predominantly. So basically, customer success is the discipline of gathering insights from customers and users' data to boost retention, turbocharge upsell, and kill churn. These are the three most important activities that we have in CS. And typically for doing that, you need to get data from your customers and users. And data is actually in 7 different sources that we can pick up from. There's data in your product. There's data in your CRM of your customers. Your customers also raise tickets, so there's data in your tickets. Your customers ask for more features. There are feature requests from Jira and everywhere else where we can lock on to what the customers think about you. Emails, of course, remain a very important ingredient, and other communication channels like Slack or Intercom, all these channels. Then, of course, your customers subscribe and make payments through Stripe or ChargeBee or Zoho Books, Zoho subscriptions, SaaS Optics. So these are also important areas. And finally, of course, we would like to know how the customers are using your meeting applications, your calendar applications, your sales applications like Gong and stuff. So these are all your sources of data. These are the 7 sources of truth that basically every CS tool has to integrate with. And from there, you can figure out how your customers are doing, what they're doing, and how they're basically using your product and getting all the data from the product. So basically, from the product side, which is the most important touch point, your customers are likely to touch your product more than anything else. There are basically 3 kinds of data points which CS teams pick up. One is the usage, which is how much they're using your product, how much time they're spending. Then there's adoption, which basically means are they using your features correctly? What is the volume of the feature usage and stuff? And finally, the point which is much more thorny but very important is to figure out if your customers and users are completing the use cases to get value from your product. That's called outcomes. So usage, adoption, and outcomes are 3 things that are measured. For doing that, most of the SaaS, CS tools integrate these 3 channels: Mixpanel, Amplitude, and Pendo to get the job done. And I just put together that the truth table of what integration gives you what kind of picture. So Mixpanel and Amplitude are fairly similar in their process. Pendo gives you an additional picture of the use case outcomes, which is extremely important to figure out are your customers using the outcomes correctly or not. However, the gold standard is to create your own product tracking systems, which only Gainsight as a company right now have. everybody else basically are piggybacking on the existing tools that other SaaS companies are using. So that's what the data coming from the product side is. It's very important to look into the usage, adoption, and outcomes. And the gold standard is to create your own product tracking system for getting your customers' perspective. Point number 2 is to get data from your CRM. Your CRM, of course, pipes in lots of sources from everywhere. So it's important to capture the data from your CRM as well. Your CRM might have data about your customers' entire metadata, their lifestyle information, their licenses, the user roles, their NPS, CSAT, all of these information pieces are actually residing in your CRM. So we have to always look into integrating the CRM as well. Then, of course, your customers are likely to log tickets with you, issues with you. So CS teams typically integrate a bunch of these ticketing tools. And these ticketing tools basically answer the question that how many tickets are being logged, how many tickets are of high priority, and how many tickets are being resolved, to figure out which customer is aggravated and which customer requires more help, or which customer requires more love and care from that perspective. So that data is all data is going to come from your ticketing applications. So this is a very popular integration choice for all CS tools. Then, of course, CS tools love to integrate the feature request data so that we can know if your customers are requesting for too many features, what is the priority of features, and are we resolving and delivering those features to our customers or not. So therefore, this also remains an important choice of integration for CS tools. Similarly, there is data that's about your customers, about their paying capability, their paying cadence, and what subscription they're handling, using. So therefore, integrating with ChargeBee, Stripe, SaaS Optics, basically subscription and invoice tools data remains also an important choice of integration for CS tools, which we should also be looking into. Then, of course, there is email comms and data coming from your Slack or your intercom, where customers are basically pouring in their thoughts. So it's important to integrate those sources to figure out what your customers think about you. Are they responsive with you? Are they actually looking into you? Are they with you all the time, or they are not? Being that much responsive with you or not. So the emails and comms parts are also very, very important choice of integration for CS tools. And finally, then there's discussions that's going go on in your Gong or your Calendly or your Zoom or your email calendars or your Google calendars. These also give you a perspective of what are your touch points with the customers. So these are also important choice of integrations that people have with CS tools. Now that we have integrated all these tools, your product data for adoption, usage, and outcomes, your CRM, your ticketing, your features, your subscription invoice, your email comms, and your meetings and your calendars, what do the CS team do with these data points? Well, what they do is first they build health scores for the customers. So they need to aggregate all these data sources and then create KPIs and metrics for figuring out how the customers are doing right now. So typically, for example, let's say if you integrate your ticketing tool, people tend to create these kind of metrics that, hey, if my customer log 10 tickets per month, 5 tickets per month, then they're green. If they log between 5 and 10, they're yellow. If they're, of course, logging more than 10 tickets a month, then they're red. So this is how they typically create those, consume the data points that we are integrating with multiple sources. Only problem is that all of this is basically gut feel type metric. Like, how do you know that 5 tickets is good and 10 is not so good? Like, could it also be like 2 tickets is good and 7 is not so good? So what is the decision making here that goes on? It's very, very subjective. And therefore, what happens is down the line, people stop to trust their own health scores, because eventually they were actually a byproduct of their own gut feel and anything else. So that's a very important step that we need to understand, that even though all the tools allow for integrations, building health profile and customer health and metrics takes actually a very, very long time. People take 3 to 6 months to build these health profiles. And even if they do so, they only generate as many as like 5 to 10 metrics as at max, because it's very, very hard to create these things with proper statistical backing and deep understanding on those pictures. So that's the first part. Once you integrate the data, you basically build a customer health profile with KPIs. Then step number 2 is you then anticipate the most common problems that will befall your entire customer journey. For example, your customer needs to go through a QBR, or customer needs to have a renewal discussion, or if renewal is coming up in 30 days, you need to create a whole campaign for your customer to know more about your product, see if they're using it right. So basically what people do is they build these if-then conditions, that if this is true, then let's do these activities, let's trigger these actions. And these are called playbooks. So they build these playbooks based on certain condition, certain activities have to be done. And that's basically the structure for building this repeatable playbooks that is actually very important for CS people. Now, this again is a very, very manual process. You have to understand the whole customer journey. And then people take 3 to 6 months to actually create around not more than 10 to 20 playbooks at max. So it's a tedious manual process that you have to go through as a CS person to first integrate, second create KPI metrics, and then create playbooks based on the entire life cycle of the customer. And the last part is it's very important that the CS teams do handle the customers. As in when the customer's life cycle change, their positions change, things come up. For example, you would want to do QBRs, you would want to do customer reviews, you want to set up a NPS or a customer satisfaction index survey. For doing all of these handlings, the customer success people always depend on a lot of internal comms from their support team, sales team, engineering team, marketing team, finance team. Basically, CS becomes the quarterback and they pass on these balls to everybody else to help them achieve these objectives of the customer. The only problem here is that almost all the CS tools in the world, they charge you for per seat basis. So what people do in order to save their, the ARRs to go very high, ACVs to go very high, they do not give access of their CS tools to their sales people, support people, finance people, marketing people, CXOs. So only the customer success people get to know the problem, and when they do socialize the problems, they are not met with a lot of empathy from the other departments. That remains a major problem in collaboration that needs to be resolved, which is very, very important for CS tools. So finally, very put together, what do we get at the end? Essentially, CS requires you to have data aggregation coming from the 7 data points of your product, CRM, ticketing, email, features, invoices, and of course your email and sales call applications. Then based on these integrations, you need to create an accurate health profile. And then from there, you need to define what are the most common scenarios that will happen to your business, build those playbooks. And then to resolve the issues, you need to have some sort of a collaboration going on amongst your other external team members. And finally, to solve those upsell and those loops, you would need to have strategies to mitigate those problems as well. So this is basically what CS does. That's the CS everyday process. Let's look into the third part, which is what is the customer success landscape right now? And in this space, we will go very quickly into the understanding what is happening in the CS space, who are the participants, what's going on here. Now here, there's a very, very clear and interesting demarcation that exists right now, which was done by the COVID-19 pandemic. It separated the old and new generation very, very, very clearly. So all the companies who began before the pandemic are basically old gen CS companies. And then the newer ones came in after the pandemic, which are, right now challenging the way the old gen was doing their business always. So I'm going to show to you how the entire picture has emerged and how it's going to emerge in the next couple of years as well. So step number 1 is first to understand that there are lots of global surveys that happen. There are lots of global think tanks that are there for customer success. One of them is Customer Success Collective. And they have just recently published a couple of reports. We will get to that as well, and we'll show some of the reports. But here are a couple of interesting participants that we have here. So Gainsight is the granddaddy of customer success. They started the whole process 10 years back. Today, they have around 1,500 customers under their kitty. And today, if you look at the entire picture of customer success, it is not a replacement market because there's a very large unconquered headroom that exists. So total global SaaS has around 30,000 companies who can all benefit from buying and adopting a CS tool. But all the current CS tools that are existing right now have captured only 5,000 companies. So only 15% of the market is actually penetrated and captured. 85% of the market is still to be captured, and that's a huge headroom. So it's not a market which is replacing tools. You don't have to harp on replacement technology, but it's more like an adoption process through which the companies will grow from here. On the right-hand side, if you see this picture, it shows you all the major players and how many customers they have right now. So that's the story that's right now in the landscape of how many customers each of these players have. Moving on, the entire customer success field, CS field, the major fight is actually in the place of high mid-market and enterprise side. So all the old gen companies, people who have been around in business for like last 10 years, 8 years, 7 years, 6 years, all of these guys, they have been mostly contesting here in the high end of the mid-market, which is almost touching enterprise, to the enterprise segment. The SMB and mid-market is where the presence of this old gen companies is extremely, extremely wafer thin. The new gen companies, by the way, are focused more towards the center part of the picture, which is your mid-market and high-end mid-market. And some of them also have an SMB focus as well. But mostly if you see, SMB and the mid-market is largely unconquered, unnoticed, and it is a space where there is a lot of potential. The most of the action is here in the high end of mid-market and enterprise side, which is hotly contested among all the old gen companies that have been around for a while now. All right, moving on from here, if we see this, today the SMB and mid-market segment is huge. It has 28,000 players globally right now. And it is supposed to have a 10-fold growth in the next 10 years. It is highly underserved in the CS sector. And the old gen, if you see here in the last diagram that I showed to you, they do not enjoy a lot of competitive advantage in this space as well. The new gen, by the way, is actually working hard to converting this entire space for themselves, which is where exactly we also would like to throw our hat in the ring and play from here. Okay, so that's the real story. There's a very, very large position that people can play in SMB and mid-market right now, which is underserved. And the old gen companies do not have a lot of competitive advantage in that space. There has been some, activity done trying to downstream the products to fit the SMB and mid-market. Is not done very well for anyone. Okay. Similarly, the old gen right now, if you see, they have, because they've been around for a long time, they are pretty well funded here, as you can see the numbers. And except for the crazy 2021-22 euphoria that actually went through, the new gen companies are still not like funded to the gills. So there is a lot of funding that still has to happen here. It's of course gaining popularity, but it's not of course as high as what the old gen companies have already seen in space. Again, if you look at this, the line is very, very sharp between old and new gen. All the old gen companies, Gainsight, Catalyst, Totango, PlanHat, all of these companies are non-product led growth companies. They're purely sales led growth processes. So they grow their entire sales based on the entire sales led processes, while the new gen companies are all getting into becoming the PLG process of it. Now, this is very, very important and interesting to notify that if any CS tool is coming up right now, which is the new gen CS tool, they should look into the PLG part of the entire process for them to be able to reap more benefits from the market right now. So this space, by the way, has also seen some traction in terms of M&A and exits. The M&A and exits have been of two major kinds. For example, Gainsights and the Tangos of the world, the bigger ones, they've acquired companies for basically technology capabilities. While if you see that larger company like Freshworks and Medallia, they've acquired CS companies to actually foray into the customer 360-degree customer service market actually. And again, there have been some PE exits, and there have also been acquisitions, again, as I mentioned, on the technology front. So both the sides have happened here. There are acquisitions that have happened for technology capabilities, and there are acquisitions that have happened for actually foraying into this entire space as well. And this is likely to grow, and this impetus is likely to continue because there are lots of companies right now who are working in the customer 360 space where they want to look into customer data and build the business on top of it. So you should expect to see a lot of more acquisitions and mergers in this space, because for these dynamics would likely to exist for the next 10 years or so. And finally, most importantly to understand is that fact that this space, because SaaS has grown popularity, this remains a space where people are still focused very, very strongly. So that remains an extremely important area. Because there is a large headroom, there has not been immediate consolidation because there's 85% headroom of getting more customers in SMB mid-market. There's not been immediate consolidation among these companies, like the top tier companies. They have not acquired each other's yet because everybody is growing right now. So there is no real push for them to acquire each other at a high price, but they rather will acquire companies who are complementary to the strategy, or they're bringing something new to the entire tool, like a space that they are non-competitive in the past, but with the advent of this company, they can become competitive. So this is the space which is likely to remain heated from that perspective. So what's the landscape looking like? Well, the old gen and the new gen are the two kinds of business that exist in CS. And any business that are coming up right now has to look into the new gen processes and the old gen processes. So the old gen remains mostly top tier mid-market and enterprise focused, while the new gen remains SMB and mid-market focused, where there is a huge growth potential. Today, it is mostly unconquered and is going to have a 10x expansion in the next 10 years or so. This is a space where there would be a lot of winners created. And of course, this market is in adoption mode, so there's no need to replace anybody right now. You can keep adopting for the foreseeable future because there's a large headroom. And because of all the dynamics, there would be an expected M&A flurry as well in this space as we go along. So that's the third part of the landscape. Let's look into the opportunities part. For the opportunities, basically in this space, first step is for me to show you how do we identify opportunities. Well, what we do is we are looking into lots of published reports that a lot of customer success think tanks publish. And these think tanks publish reports. We read them, of course, because we're in a space. We, of course, want to be abreast with the entire thing happening right now. And we have put them all together in a very neat package for you to figure out and know exactly what is this CS community looking forward to right now. So one of the largest think tanks is Customer Success Collective, and we have lots of data actually picked up from their various reports that we have pulled over the years. Now, this is a think tank which surveys repeatedly multiple CS people, customer managers, and basically they build their entire reports out of that. So if you see here, you can see that on the right-hand side, if you see this graph, you can very clearly see that there is a strong focus that people have asked, the CS community has asked towards providing automation in customer health checks. This remains their most important pain point. If I as a CS person have to understand which customer is likely to churn, which customer is likely to renew, which customer is likely to upsell, I have to go through the routes of figuring out which customer's health is good, bad, or ugly. So this is the primary concern, that most of the people, despite having all these tools, are saying that, hey, we need more automation in terms of understanding the customer's health part. The second part which they have expressed their desire is the CS operations, the playbooks part, that, hey, okay, now we've got the customer health part at least understood. We now need to find a way to be able to address the most common problems that customers face, and how can we actually go and address those problems as well by building those playbooks in our CS tools. So that's the second most important ask that the CS community actually has put together. And third is the customers' milestones. When the customers go through QBRs, churns, renewal processes, or something happens with the customer, then what can we do about that remains the third most asked for advancements in the CS process. So these are three most important areas. And if any CS tool right now wishes to build something, they must address these three important challenges for sure. Automation for customer health check, automation for CS operations and playbooks, automation for customer milestones in their trackings itself. So that's the first part which I wanted to underscore. And if you go to the G2 reviews that people have put together for the existing incumbents in the CS process, you would see some very, very clear patterns emerge as well. You would see that most of the people have found these tools to be hard to use. Their user experience and the usability is a hard part. These tools were built a long time back. The usability is not amazing. That's the first problem that people are reporting to you. The second problem people are reporting to you is integrations are very, very hard and very, very time taking. Please remember, you have to integrate your product, CRM, ticketing, email, features, invoices, and your sales meetings and calendar applications. These 7 kinds of data have to be integrated for CS people to make sense of their customers. Integrations is time and again, people have found to be very, very difficult, very tedious, long time taking. This is what their second biggest priority is, which people actually put themselves on G2. And then, of course, people have put a very, very strong point that these tools take a lot of effort to put together. In fact, it takes anywhere between 4 weeks to 12 weeks to actually integrate a CS tool right now and get it going, which is a huge amount of effort is required for all the folks. And that's exactly what you can see here right now. So what is the community telling you? The community of CS people are telling you that we need to solve these problems. And by the way, you can go and see this exact same problem, and I've put it together for the most important players here with the kinds of problems. For example, if you look at Gainsight, their major problem is they're hard to use. The UI UX experience is not great. The second biggest problem is the fact that this is very heavy effort to do this. And the third problem of Gainsight they have put together is complication. This is a very complicated product. Similarly, every other tool that is old gen but been around for a long time, people have put what are the major problems that they have faced with these tools. And if you're a new gen CS company, and if you don't address these problems, then you are likely to repeat the exact same mistake that everybody did. So very quickly, what are the opportunities? The opportunities that exist in this space are very, very clear. This is defined by what the incumbents are showing to you. And these problems I just showed to you, these are the problems that we need to solve right now. So first problem that we need to do is we need to make sure the integrations of the product is absolutely butter smooth. These are the 7 places from where your CS people are going to get data for your CS tool. Now, the table stakes is, hey, you just integrate these tools. That is not that's not what the community is telling you. The community is telling you that, hey, we want you to give me something which is pre-packaged, so that when I integrate with my Salesforce, I don't have to go back and ask my Salesforce admin that, hey, where is the customer ID field? Where is the customer type field? Because the CS person does not know these things. It's the Salesforce admin who knows these answers. Can you, the CS tool, the new gen CS tool, already pre-map it for me so that I don't have to go into this organization-wide brainstorming for my ticketing, CRM, feature request application, emails and comms, subscription, Stripe, invoices, so for all of these apps, what happens is the CS tools people right now have to go into a long consultation with the app admins of Salesforce, HubSpot, Freshdesk, Jira, Stripe, Gmail, which takes a lot of time of their effort. And large companies like Gainsight and stuff, they say, hey, we don't do this. Why don't you use our outsourced partners? And these outsourced partners basically take $15,000 to $20,000, 3 to 4 weeks to basically map your data with your app admins. So these specialized companies, they're not Gainsight, they're Gainsight's partner companies. They will sit with SaaS company. They will talk to their Salesforce, Freshdesk, all their admins, and map out the data points so that Gainsight can be used by the CS tool. That is how hard this whole space right now is. And this is exactly what the problem that has been voiced by the community very, very clear that, hey, we want simpler integrations. Give us something out of the box which can work very, very clearly, quickly, and we can use that for our purposes. So that's the first opportunity, to make the integration super simple, to make the integration such that there already something which is working, rather than me having to go and do an org-wide brainstorming to figure out how to work this tool out. That's the first part. Second part is, which is what you saw in the pie chart of customer success collective, that give me automation for my customer health. I don't want to go and build my own customer KPIs. Like, hey, I think if less number 5 tickets are logged, then the customer is green. Otherwise, 5 to 10 is yellow. More than 10 is red. We don't want to do this because it's very, very tedious to do that. So first step is you integrate, then you think about what can I do with this data point that I'm getting. You create the KPIs, then you realize, okay, I have missed certain data points. You go back to your integration one more time. It's a multiple step back and forth through which you figure out with trial and error, what is your KPIs. And even then you create these, selective looking gut feel based KPIs. That there's no background work that if there are more than 10 tickets, then there's statistical correlation that the customers will churn. Unless you do that, this particular kind of health check process is highly suboptimal. And there are tons and tons of resources where CS people have complained that they started to, not trust their own health KPIs as well. So the second option that exists is to basically provide the automation for healthcare as well. Third option that exists is to basically build the CS ops, which again, if you remember in the CS customer success collective, the second most important point, that give us the playbooks so that we can start the CS ops ourselves. So that I don't have to go back and create the entire, if this, then I need to do this, Those loops I don't want to create. Give me something which I can work automatically. So these are the playbooks that people create, that if this happens, then let's do this and let's do that. That takes people a lot of time. Again, data points have to be integrated. That means that there's there's a blowback to integration. It's a tedious process that people take months to actually come up with. So can the new gen tools actually solve this problem? That remains another problem to solve. Then you have the onboarding has to be super smooth, super simple. Effort cannot be given. Like 4 to 12 weeks to integrate a tool right now is just too much. And that's exactly the problem with CS tools. Everybody's complaining about the effort part of it, which we don't want to put together. So these are the most important areas where we can, as CS people, think of automating and innovating. The parts where these issues claim a clear picture that people need quick integration, people need automation for their customer health, people need automation for their playbooks, people need quick onboarding, and people need these are all the gaps that this new gen CS tools should solve, so that people can the CS people can actually use the tools better. All right, so we have covered the need, we have covered the details of what CS essentially is. We have looked at the landscape of who are the participants, we've seen the opportunities. Let's quickly look into the part where when you start to evaluate a CS tool, what are the 5 most important questions that you should ask and see the answers are being given by the CS tools or not. So that's the holy grail part of it. Like, how do I find out the diamond in the rough, so to speak, to figure out which CS tool is likely to actually have a better impact with the community, what they've been desiring for over the years. So these are the 5 questions I'm going to put together. Very neat questions that if a CS tool can answer, then this is definitely an opportunity that you should pursue and see further from here onwards. Step number 1, that tool must show the evidence of very, very fast onboarding and integrations, which means that the table stakes right now is that, hey, I will provide you with integrations with 40 tools. That is just pure and simple table stakes. 40 app integration is not enough. What you do inside those integrations is the real story. Show me that you actually have insights. Let's say, for example, for lack of any better example, let's take Salesforce, that I would like to integrate the CS tool with my Salesforce. Then show me that the CS tool actually has a default integration at a Salesforce table and column level, so that I don't have to employ a whole organization-wide data-centric process of figuring out what is to be mapped with what, which is extremely important to look at. So show us evidence of fast integrations, then show us evidence of fast customer health automation. 43% CS folks asked for it, that I showed to you in the customers collective graph, that give us customer health automation, which we desire very, very strongly. So there is a second point which needs to be answered. You need to show that you have pre-built KPIs. The CS tool in question has pre-built KPIs through which the customer health is automatically calculated without me as a CS person having to spend 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 12 weeks to build 5, 10 KPIs in a scrappy way with my gut feels and stuff. So give me those things pre-packaged so I can start the entire process very, very quickly. So give me great integrations, pre-built field and table level integrations. Give me pre-built customer health capsules so that I can start my entire process. Give me pre-built playbooks so that if the customer ops, CS ops that I need to run, give me pre-built processes for my, for QBR renewal. What happens if my customers ticketing shows poor performance? My customer is not logging in, usage is poor, upsell is coming up. Give me those pre-built loops. I can modify it. That's all right, but give me those loops. So I have to go and think and create them, from scratch. 20% people actually have been asking for this in that customer success collective pie chart that I showed to you, where people have been requesting for it. This is one of the second most important requirement that people have put together. And then, of course, give me supremely fast onboarding. I don't want to spend 4 weeks, 12 weeks. If I'm an SMB or a mid-market company, 12 weeks is just it's sacrilege. It's not possible to give somebody 12 weeks to integrate something. So that will be the very important part of doing that as well. And then, of course, the last part, of course, which is very important to understand, is show evidence that this CS tool can actually do a PLG strategy. Because if you're targeting SMB and mid-market, which is where the most unconquered latent need is, where the downstream for the current old gen products has failed very clearly. This is the space where it will reward PLG strategies very clearly. Now, you cannot do PLG unless you have number 1, 2, 3, and 4 very, very well sorted. Unless you have extremely strong, very, very fast integrations, pre-built health, pre-built playbooks, and very, very fast onboarding, you possibly cannot do a PLG on your own. So these are the 5 questions that you should ask every CS tool that you see right now, that are they going to be fitting the bill for what it's desired by the market right now. So you put it all together. Let's put the last section here, which is the crystal ball. And I'm like, I have 15 more minutes in the session on the clock, so we'll go quickly into it. So, it's a story from the past, but there's a lesson for the future. So 10 years back, marketing analytics automation was not very well understood. Google Analytics was the only company which did that well. Today, marketing automation has 5,000 plus startups, 20 plus unicorns, and a $50 billion market capitalization. Now, CS is exactly going in the same direction. The only thing is that there are early players, but there are no clear winners yet. So as long as you're able to find the right organization which answers these 5 questions extremely well, you are in the scientific category of answering to what the community wants from you. And that is where I would suggest for you to look at. That will be the companies who are the most investable for the CS space is. So this is a very quick rejoinder. Before we get to the question and answer, can we actually have a very quick poll that Shivam can put together? It will just take a couple of seconds for you guys to answer that poll. Let's see that poll result after 6 seconds. So Shivam, can you just activate the poll for all the panel participants here?
Yes, sure. Okay, right. So I've launched the poll. You'll be able to see the poll on your screens.
Yep. So please choose one of the answers, and we will close it in 1 minute, and then we will see the results, and then we will go through the question answer part of it. All right, I think that should be enough time to put the votes. Let's just
most of the people have participated. I'm just going to share the results.
Sure, please do. Okay, so it's a mixed bag. Okay, so some of our investors was joined in. That's great. So the biggest part is basically where you're building a thesis. So that's great. We will be sharing this presentation, and we'll be sharing this recording as well, so that you can actually have a look at that, share it with your teams internally. There's no problem with that. Thank you very much. If there are any questions, you can raise your hand. If you have any questions, you can put into the quick Q&A box. We are done with the presentation part of it. It was supposed to be a 40-minute presentation. We have finished on time. If there are any questions, we will take them. Okay, I don't see a lot of questions, so that's fine. This is my contact coordinates for all of you guys. Thank you very much for attending this. I think there's a question. Okay, so Aradhya has asked a question talking about automating customer health. Mention was made of KPIs being gut feel based and hence untrustable in longer run. When you mean to say customers' tool should give KPIs pre-built, want to understand how this solves statistical backing part of things. That's a great question. Basically, your KPIs that you would want to provide as a CS tool have to be statistical backed KPIs. So we provide, so for example, ZapScale has 40 KPIs which are purely stats backed. So we not only just provide the KPIs which are like purely just like gut feel based, but we look into the KPIs from a more statistical perspective. We figure out the correlations with the results. We also do, figure out. We also figure out how can we look into the entire bell curve of all your customers and figure out which one are the most, the ones which require most of your help. We can do a much more detailed analysis of this KPI structures of ZapScale. Whenever you have time, ping us. You have my contact coordinates on the screen right now. You can see it. I can happily tell you about the entire process that we do. But essentially, what has to happen is, though these new generation tools have to be creating KPIs which are based on statistics rather than just gut feel. Let me give you one example. So let's imagine that you have two customers, customer A and customer B. Customer A has logged, let's say, 10 tickets, and customer B has logged, say, 20 tickets. So you would immediately think that customer B is much more aggravated. But the fact is, customer A has used your product for 10 hours, and customer B has used your product for 200 hours, which means customer A has logged 10 tickets for 10 hours, which means for every hour of usage, they're logging one ticket. And customer B is used the product for 200 hours and used 20 tickets, which means for every 10 hours, they're logging one ticket. So which means customer A is seeing more number of tickets per number of hours used on their product. So the statistical analysis tells you that customer A is far more aggravated than customer B. So there are 40 such KPIs that we have built, which cut through this entire gut feel and conjecture driven health, which is what we have built. Happy to show it to you whenever you have some time in your hand. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn or at my email, or you can also book a call with me on this link if you click on that. Okay, there are no more questions. Thank you very much for your time, everybody. I'm assuming there are no more questions because nobody has typed anything, so that's fine. Thanks for your time, everybody. Thanks a lot for your participation. Really appreciate it. We will send this presentation over to you and also recordings. If there's anything that we can do for customer success for you to understand this a little better, I'm happy to always come in and be available for that. So thank you, everybody. Have a good evening ahead. Take care. Bye-bye.